Okay, so before we start to look at non-fatal offences individually, I just want to give us an overview, and I'm going to use this diagram in order to do that, to present an overview map of the non-fatal offences. And it's worth saying in the first instance that the diagram in itself does two things. It lays out all of the 5 non-fatal offences that we look at in this syllabus, but it does it in a way that demonstrates that an increase in seriousness as you move towards the top of the pyramid, and a decrease in prevalence. And what I mean by prevalence is that it's less frequently committed. So at the bottom of this we have assault and battery, which are the least serious of the offences but the most often committed, whilst at the top we have GBH with intent, which is the most serious of offences but the least often committed. And what I've got in this diagram is the actus reus and the mens reus, as well as the individual sections within the statute that it comes from. And that leads me on to the next point, and that is that the non-fatal offences are both a mix of common law and statutory offences. And the dividing line for that is contained here. The dividing line for that is contained here, in which we see those offences that are below the line are common law offences, and those cases above the line are statutory offences. And the statute that we are discussing here, that we're talking about, is the Offences Against the Person Act. So Offences Against the Person Act, which is an old act. And if you look at the date of Offences Against the Person Act, 1861, you should already be starting to guess that the language that is going to be used in that act and to define those offences is going to be old, relatively archaic and difficult to work with on times, and it has caused some confusion, as we will see in later videos. So we have 2 common law offences which are relatively modern in the way in which they've been crafted, and we've got 3 very old statutory offences under the Offences Against the Person Act 1861. And I'll probably refer to that piece of statute now as OAPA, just because it makes it slightly easier. And the mismatch of these two, this sort of mix of statutory offences and common law offences, means that there is some overlap and some confusion, and we will see that when we look at each of the 5 offences in turn and we look at the evaluation of the non-fatal offences. So the easiest way to start is to look at each of these individually, and the first thing to look at is assault. And assault is quickly and easily defined as the no touching offence. It merely involves the apprehension of physical violence, not fear, and we'll discuss that when we look at assault, but the apprehension. It means that I think that somebody else is going to assault me. Battery, on the other hand, is the offence in which there is some touching that occurs, and we'll see that that touching can be the merest of touches. So here we have assault, which is about no touching, and battery, which is about touching. And the interesting thing about this is, in common parlance, in the way in which people speak, if they talk about an assault, they generally are talking about physical violence. But as we'll see, and as we now know, that's not necessarily the case. These 2 cases, assault and battery, although they are distinct and separate, which means that you can commit both in the same instance and you can be charged with both in the same instance, they are normally lumped together under the title of what's known as common assault. So assault and battery are individual offences which are the least serious of the offences, the most often committed, and together are defined as common assault. The least serious of our statutory offences are those under section 47 of the OAPA 1861. And although the name of that offence is assault occasioning actual bodily harm, we generally refer to it as ABH, and we'll probably refer it to ABH throughout most of the videos that we talk about. Again, it's the least serious of the OAPA offences, but the most often committed of those. Our second offence is committed under section 20 of the OAPA 1861, and we commonly know that as GBH. And that GBH refers to grievous bodily harm. And grievous bodily harm really means serious harm. And we'll look at that and we'll discuss that in great depth when we talk through this video. And finally, our most serious offence is the one under section 18, and that's GBH with intent. And that will already start to tell you the key things that divide and define each of our 5 offences. The first is that all 5 offences are defined by their level of mens rea. There is a different mens rea for each of these offences. As you can see with section 18, it has to be the intent to commit grievous bodily harm. The second is our offences are defined by the level of injury. Here at the bottom, there is no injury at all because there's no touching. Here at the top, we have really serious injury. So we define each of our 5 offences by a mix of the mens rea and the injury concerned. Now that should immediately then lead you on to another area. If we do another dividing line here, as we can see that this is an intent-only crime, we can clearly state that section 18 is a specific intent crime. That is, it can only be committed with the specific direct or oblique intent to commit GBH, to cause GBH. Whereas our other 4 crimes are basic intent crimes, And that means that, yes, they can be committed either direct or oblique, with direct or oblique intent, but they can also be committed here with an element of recklessness, as you can see in all of them. And that's Cunningham's subjective recklessness. And we'll talk about the mens rea in each of the individual videos. So as an overview, there's quite a great deal in that video. And as you can see, it's important for you to know before we go on to look at each of them that there are less serious to more serious offences. They go from assault, battery, ABH, GBH and GBH with intent. That the top 3 are statutory, whilst the bottom are relatively new common law. That there is 1 specific intent crime and 4 basic intent crimes. And that's about all that I'm going to discuss on this video. It's just an overview, and it's just to give you a heads up to, if you like, look at a higher view approach at what crimes we will be looking at in this part of the course.